This is the worst Game of Thrones podcast in the world, where no one knows anything and everyone is wrong. Hello and welcome back to the worst Game of Thrones podcast in the world. I'm Joanna Hunkin, joined by Carl Pushman, Sienna Yates and George Fennick. Guys, 4 episodes deep. Things improved yesterday, it has to be said. It feels like we're back in proper Thrones territory. There was scheming, there was double takes and changing of allegiances.
There were a few lulls.
There were a few lulls. There was also some really terrible dialogue, which I'm still not happy about. Gendry proposing to Arya, who we have now agreed is called Arya and not Arya, just FYI.
She'll always be a little blindy to me.
Correct. Yeah, what did everyone think?
I mean, I agree with you that, like 2 shocking deaths in one episode is pretty... That's back to the Game of Thrones we fell in love with, right?
It makes up for the no shocking deaths last week during the giant battle.
For sure. But then also, I totally agree, not only is the Gendry and Arya thing, I'm still going to say Arya, sorry, that to me, I'm just like, where did this chemistry come from? Because I'm still not seeing it on screen.
Agree. I think this is the lazy script writing we've talked about before, where now they're just jumping in, even with Brienne and Jaime, I feel like that sort of, it was a fan theory and there'd been little hints of it, but for suddenly them to be in what you can only assume was a few days of shacked up loving bliss, so that when Jaime left, Brienne
she breaks down.
Exactly, like the toughest woman in the world breaks down crying, please don't leave me.
I can buy the Gendry thing, he was all smitten and it moves Arya, little blindy's story along and shows how much of a badass she is. She doesn't care for people, whatever. So I buy him doing his thing. He was all romantic and in love and smitten.
But when did he become in love with her? After having sex once?
Yeah, I know.
Life does not work that way.
Maybe it doesn't
He's a bit of a simple fellow.
The threat of death hangs over you, so you just want to fall in love at any second.
But
listen,
Jaime
this happens
thing,
in real life, to be fair.
the Jamie thing I didn't buy at all.
No, that was awful.
I'm also
all of a sudden he's like, actually, no, I'm a bit of a jerk.
Every time Jon and Daenerys as well are like, but I love you. I'm like, come on. We saw you interact a few times last season. I don't feel like they have any chemistry.
You were warm acquaintances.
Yeah, for sure. And also, my friend was explaining this really well last night. We saw Jon over 3 seasons fall in love with Ygritte, and that became really believable. They had chemistry, and then him being actually really heartbroken over what happened to her.
Who was she? I can't remember.
Admittedly, he did marry her in real life, so I guess they did have really great chemistry.
That's true. Ygritte, the wildling girl.
Oh, right, yes. Yeah.
But then now, so it just feels inconsistent with his character that he's suddenly just although I guess if a beautiful woman showed up with 3 dragons at first, you'd be like, hell yes.
Look at those dragons.
Yeah,
Whoa. She's
It's enough to turn anyone.
I just feel like this weird thing has happened where Game of Thrones used to be really, for lack of a better word, this isn't what I mean, but sexy. People would have sex all the time and everyone would be in a brothel and it would be nothing. And now all of a sudden you have sex one time and you're in love. And everyone's doing it all over the show and it's clearly that build up for when people die that you're sad about the relationship being destroyed, but it's not really a relationship, it's just there.
I think we might be victims of a 6-episode season. Everything's being rushed and compacted and they've got all these things to tie up and goodbyes to happen and people to shuffle around. They're just trying to get too much stuff into a small amount of time.
Yeah,
it sounds like we've probably got 2 seasons worth of stuff to wrap up and make things believable, and they just got to barrel through it.
Finding the time frames so confusing but also implausible, because when they burnt everyone at the start, or burnt all the bodies at the start of the episode, it would have taken days, if not weeks, to build all those funeral pyres. So how? But yet they only start celebrating that night the victory over the what are they called again? The dead people, the White Walkers. I was going to call them Dead Walkers, and I was like, that's not right.
Close enough.
And imagine the smell. My God, you wouldn't be partying.
Exactly, but nothing makes sense. Either, and they've all sort of cleaned up and seemingly recovered quite a bit. No one's still bleeding or have obvious wounds to the head, which they seem to have incurred during the battle. Yet somehow. Actually, no. And then, 48 hours, they're ready to hit the road and go fight another war?
I agree, because also Daenerys being so the longer I wait, the the more I lose or whatever. I hadn't thought about that those stakes would have taken days and weeks to build. So Daenerys, like, weren't you stressing already? Like, I don't know. The timeline doesn't make any sense. And the fact that they can just, like,
They got to King's Landing
be
pretty
in King's
quick.
Landing by the end of the episode, it just feels very, like, it feels like the plot is bending over backwards to, like, do what the writers want it to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's just us who thinks the writing is bad. I've seen lots of online chatter about how it's just sort of deteriorated.
Especially think back to Aya and the Hound in season 2, whenever it was, it took them an entire season to get from like Winterfell down to wherever they were going. So yeah, just doesn't
I don't think
make
the
sense.
writing's bad. I think it's a little bit nonsensical maybe, but just that's because of that rush. I think they're trying to get it all happening. And like they shouldn't have got to King's Landing straight away. I'm glad they did, because all that mucking around at the start for like the first half hour or whatever was so boring. Even though stuff was happening, I was just so bored. It's like, get on with it.
It was good when the action sort of kicked in and the dragon was felled from the sky.
Okay, so here's a question. Who are people rooting for now? Who do you want to see win? Because obviously there's trouble in paradise with old John and Dany. It's not going to work for them they're not actually going to end up together. That's definite. So I think John has to die and for Dany to be queen.
Do you think she'll betray him to...
No,
have
I
a
reckon
lost
it will.
love thing?
I think he will self-sacrifice. He will go in to fight for her, get killed. I also predict that Jaime is actually going to be the one to betray Cersei in the end.
Yeah, I think you're onto something. I think Daenerys is going to go full Mad Queen.
Psycho.
And I feel like her ethics are going to be so corrupted that she won't be able to be queen anymore.
I am starting to think maybe they all die down at King's Landing and then Sansa and Arya just come in for the win.
That's my
Stroll in.
dream team right there.
Genuinely, when Sansa and Arya were like standing facing Daenerys being like, you are a complete idiot, I was like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
this pairing is wonderful. Sisterhood for real.
Especially after all those seasons of them hating each other for no good reason. And now look at them.
And
Dream team.
I feel like Tyrion and Lord Varys can get behind that and help endorse that.
I know. And Sansa is just like, so many things wouldn't have gone wrong if people just listened to Sansa. Like, not just in this episode, but in this season, in this show.
Yep. She's the
In
only
my
one who's
life.
making like proper leadership calls, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Storing food for the winter and all that kind of nonsense that needs to
Exactly.
be done. Just because you're not
Maybe-
roaming around on a dragon.
Maybe she's the one that had stockpiled all the wood for the funeral.
Maybe.
I bet she did.
Because
I
who
bet
else
she
would
did.
have done it?
Because she knew there was going to be a ton of bodies to get rid of.
I think maybe the show is heading in that direction, that
It
she
seems to be, doesn't
might
it?
be the last one standing. Because the other thing is that she... I want her to have some sort of confrontation with Cersei, but that might not happen. But then that also kind of means she's safe, right, to survive.
Has she got any plans to leave Winterfell?
It didn't
We
seem
don't.
like
We
it-
don't know yet.
There was that line where she sort of said, I wanted to be there for your sister's execution.
That's right. Yeah.
But now I won't get to see it because that was her saying she doesn't believe Dany's going to win, right?
Yeah, I think she was sort of saying Dany has completely messed this up.
Also, did anyone else pick up on Arya's statement to the Hound that when he says, "I'm not planning on coming back,"
Yeah.
and she says, "Neither am I." Do we think that's because she's got plans to go somewhere else, or she thinks she's going to die?
Or because she thinks that they're going to win and she's going to live at King's Landing forever.
No.
Yeah, well, I wondered whether maybe that was hinting that maybe she's going to go kill Cersei, because the other thing I noticed was a close-up of Cersei's face this episode, bright green eyes, and I thought that might have linked back to the green eyes, blue eyes, brown eyes, green eyes thing that Miss Melisandre said to her. And like that was sort of the last we saw of Arya that episode, so she, I presume, is heading to King's Landing now.
That was such a great little scene as well. Her and the Hound reuniting.
I love
back on
them
their
together.
travels. Yeah, they're a great.
Can I pivot
Great
here
pair.
to another scene with the Hound and Sansa?
Yes.
That scene really, really aggravated me because, and I don't know if I'm the only one thinking this, but that
you can
line,
only be a strong woman if you get raped and brutalized
Thank
along the
you.
way.
Yeah, that
Correct.
really, really frustrated me because I feel like this is the same show that did set up that Sansa had strength inside her from season 1, and to now, after the fact, be like, for her to literally say that she had become a new person and like changed, and she would not be this person had she not been raped. I thought, imagine how much more powerful it would have been if the Hound had said, "You've changed," and she said, something like, I've just learned. You like remember that amazing line last season where she said, I'm a slow learner, but I still learn. If she had sort of said, I'm actually still the same person, I've just learned. Instead of like, oh yeah, I got raped, therefore I became a strong person. I just feel like the show is still not quite getting strong women, quote unquote, right?
Yeah, well, that's why I didn't like the Brienne of Tarth situation because, I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't buy any of that. Him leaving like that and that whole thing just didn't make any...
It felt like that episode really just sort of like, it just screamed like men writing for women, you know? Like, oh, let's give the poor virgin Brienne a love scene because that's what she wants. And let's show how Sansa is a fiery human being because she got raped. You know, it's like, it just feels so mishandled, and they have such power and influence to show that femininity is power. You don't need to reject femininity to be powerful because, so I'm going on a rant here, but I was reading an article about how Sansa's costumes have changed over the 8 seasons, and the costume designer literally said, like, I quote, her costumes have become less feminine. And I was like, I understand that she's wearing armor and stuff now because she's sort of a leader, but imagine...
And the north is cold, so you need layers.
For sure. But imagine if you had the opportunity to still present really feminine and show that is powerful too. Like, traits that are perceived to be traditionally feminine are powerful.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's not just Sansa. Like with Cersei, you see it as well, that she used to wear really sort of beautiful,
flowy
lush...
sleeves,
like texture. And she hasn't really been in battle or needed to change it, but they've definitely like changed that style.
Yeah, for sure. Another interesting costume note, did you notice that Daenerys is suddenly in red? But it's sort of seeping beneath her white, whereas Cersei is full red. And my friend and I were talking about how perhaps that shows that Cersei is open about her complete and utter indefensible evil, whereas Daenerys is sort of like, she's got this facade of like, I will conquer, I want to lead, but like underneath, it's like, what are your reasons for that?
Red is bad? Is that a bad color?
I'm presuming red is bloodshed.
Okay.
Not love.
Symbolism?
It's not like they're going to fall in love or anything, you know?
Oh, plot twist.
Plot twist, Daenerys
That's
and Cersei.
some deep analysis.
It really is.
Right there. I'm not sure, because the red has always been under that white, the white fur thing that she's been wearing because of winter in the north. Has always had a red lining to it. I just think
not notice,
you maybe saw more of it last night because
people were commenting
because
on that
it wasn't
last
pitch
season.
black.
Right.
Because actually yesterday was the first episode that had any light to it,
Yeah.
and we could
Wasn't
see
it
what
great
was
being able
happening.
to see again?
Helpful.
Oh, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
thought
oh, look,
that-
a show. I can see it.
The especially like the stuff around Dragonstone when the dragons are flying, I was like, man, it's nice to see these dragons actually flying. But another
And
note on
then-
that, how did Daenerys not see Euron?
Let's
The
talk
ambush.
about what an idiot Daenerys is.
Correct, because that whole situation, we could have ended that whole thing in about 5 minutes flat. She just needed to loop around the back and blast them with dragonfire from behind,
She
where
didn't
they
even
could
need to
not
loop.
fire.
That's the thing. She could have taken them from the front. They'd already fired all the arrows. She dodged them all. They would have had to take time to reload, during which she could have just burnt them all
But she
alive.
just wanted to play a game of chicken.
But oh no.
Presumably-
game at chicken.
The dragon fire would also burn all the arrows. So if
You
she's
would
flying
think,
towards
yeah.
like wooden arrows, I guess they got a
Just
bit of
burn 'em
metal,
up.
but they'd burn up, wouldn't
Yeah.
they? Because isn't dragon fire like burns everything apart
That's what
from
I assumed
White Walkers?
she was going to do. But no,
Kings?
just screamed a
Yeah.
bit and then turned around.
I do think it's interesting though that they've sort of showed how vulnerable the dragons can be, because I thought it was an interesting touch that Missandei, before that awful death, said that word Dracarys, which I feel like has been used as a sort of like, and against all odds, Dracarys, and then suddenly Daenerys like comes out of nowhere.
You're going to have
and-
to translate that word.
I thought
It's the
Dracarys.
fire word.
Yeah, I thought
Right.
Dracarys was just the command to get the dragons to breathe fire.
Yeah. So, and I mean, this is just my interpretation again, but you know, there've been so many moments throughout the seasons where, you know, the score has gone silent, and then Daenerys goes Dracarys, and then the dragons come out of nowhere and save her from something, or beat the evil slavers or whatever, and the show is sort of depended on that, I think, as a sort of like last minute Deus Ex Machina. Daenerys saves the day, whereas like I feel like they were showing then that now it's not working.
I'm just going to need to stop things right here and just ask, oh my God, is that how you pronounce Deus Ex? Which I've literally for 35 years thought was Deus Ex Machina.
Well, I know I might sound like a bit of a wanker, but that's what I was told in my classics class.
No,
in
I
high
believe
school.
that makes a lot more sense. I've always thought it was a very strange
Deus
expression.
Ex Machine.
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, that's what we were talking when we studied the Greek theatre.
You're all class, George Finnick. You're
thank
all
you.
class.
You're really off-brand for this podcast today.
You can remember stuff that happened in previous seasons and
Big
episodes,
film words.
quoting things.
This is what happens with Game of Thrones is they start being like, I don't know the show at all. And then 2 episodes in, I'm reading fan theories and I'm like reading recaps and everything.
I think it's fair to say that Cersei has outsmarted them every step of the way and has now provoked Daenerys into mad rage. She is just rent-free
Cersei.
inside
And
their
I
heads
think-
right now.
and I
Cersei.
think Dany is not smart when she's mad.
No,
Even when she's calm and making strategic battle plans, she's not smart.
She's an
Everything she
idiot.
has done is not smart.
She's just a kid with some dragons.
Whereas Sansa,
Sansa's so smart.
she's so
So
Like, that
pretty.
ambush was fantastically planned. Like, they're all sailing there. Oh, gotcha. And then she's got... But that was another thing which confused me, is how did word get out that they'd captured Daenerys' best friend? Like,
It's
all of
that
a sudden,
timeline thing again.
everyone knew. Like, even back at Winterfell, they knew. Everyone knew.
Yeah.
Why didn't they just think, oh, she must have drowned with all the other
yeah.
hundreds of people that probably just drowned? No. They've
Unless someone
got her, they've
saw
got her.
her get taken, but then you would think if someone saw
All those,
her,
all
someone
those
would have.
drowning people trying to save them.
Stopped
And how did they
her.
even save her anyway? Like,
Yeah.
it was like, what? That
It's
was
very-
annoying to me. Like,
Because how did they even know who she is? That's my thing. At no point, you've got to remember, like, she came from Narth. She's been with Dany the entire time. Cersei's never encountered
never seen her.
her.
Yeah, that's so true.
So how does she know that she's this critical player
I
in...
guess that
And why did
creepy
everyone
little
else-
man has his little birds now, right? What's his name? Anyone? George?
No,
Oh,
they all
Qyburn.
got blown
I don't think
up.
it's
They all
George.
got burnt in the thing. In the... Not the Citadel, the thing I always call the Citadel.
That's true.
You know what I mean.
Cersei's wildfire.
Yeah, in that firebomb. They all died then. There haven't been any little birds since then. That whole storyline got wiped out.
And also, there were people
Of course.
caring about her being captured that shouldn't have even really cared. Like, everyone was like, oh my God, they've got, what's her name?
Missandei.
Yeah.
Sunday.
Whereas in the last episode, they were being all
Oh, jeez.
racist and
Yeah.
didn't. And
Killing off all the brown
I mean,
people.
maybe Euron was just like, there's one girl on these ships, and she's got like a nice costume, so maybe she's important. I don't know.
It's still, it was a curious. It didn't make a lot of sense.
I also
lot of
thought
things
Tyrion was
didn't.
going to die because he got smashed on the head, but somehow he survived that.
It was almost like that was a planned ad break because it all went black.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
oh, that's the end of the episode. But no, I'm going to keep going. I'm glad it did keep going, but that was
Me
a weird,
too.
a
But
weird
again,
Classic
pause.
fake out.
non-believable stakes. It's like that's the second time a Lannister has emerged strangely from the ocean after seemingly drowning. So
It's just a mask to the head.
Maybe they had very good swimming classes as children. We don't
They
know.
They
swim
were
about with their
rich.
armor on.
That's the thing that makes no sense. Like, yeah, you've got and all the not the Dothraki, the ones that the Unsullied, like they're desert dwelling people.
They
How
know
come?
how to
How come they're all swimming with their
Yeah.
arms? Like, I don't believe for a second any of them would know how to swim.
and they're all raised as slaves, right? So it's like I presume there were no swimming lessons for slaves.
They went down at the pool every Sunday morning.
Yeah, no.
So much implausibility.
I did enjoy the little powwow that Tyrion and bad priest guy
Varys.
had.
Lord Varys.
I love them together
That was-
so much.
No, not him. The
No, not that.
Cersei's hand.
Oh,
Whatever his name is. When they
really?
were out. I enjoyed that because
Oh,
they were
yeah,
like, he was just being such a jerk. It was great.
I find him so annoying.
I know.
Yeah,
That's what's so
same.
good. Tyrion's like trying to appeal to this guy and he's just.
Interesting that Cersei wasn't just like, shoot my
Yeah.
brother. You know, I thought that was gonna that might
That was
have
also a
happened.
vaguely unbelievable moment for me. I feel like she would have 100%
Yeah.
just killed him.
But that whole scene of like going to have the powwow or the confab or whatever it is, where they show up and to negotiate. I'm like, surely Cersei is not above just shooting people in cold blood.
Yeah.
Why would she not have shot the dragon then and there, killed all the like there were like 12 Unsullied versus 10,000 of her people.
Yeah,
Just
It's
do it
one of the
then. Be
unwritten
done.
rules of war. But what was interesting was that the head and the girl fall off the tower, and then you get this big wide shot of everyone reacting like shocked and angry and stuff. But her hand dude was still out there, and then in that shot where you see that, he's kind of just disappeared from the picture.
he's
He
ran.
never walked back into the safety of the King's
sprinted.
Landing. Yeah. Oh my god, I'm gonna get out of here.
Maybe
surely they would have like gone, oh, we'll just capture this guy now because he's quite important to you.
true,
He's standing
true.
right here. You've
But they would
killed
just shoot
Alfred.
you. They would just shoot them if they did that.
I think the Cersei thing to me, I'm kind of like maybe because everything that evil that she's done, she's sort of found a way to like the wildfire thing. I'm pretty sure she tried to say it was an accident or something like that. Whereas, so I feel like because she's sort of using the population of her city as a sort of like buffer, being like, oh, like Daenerys will be the one that they think is evil because she's going to kill them all.
Right.
So maybe if she had killed Daenerys and the dragon there and then, they would have realized that she was like full tyrant.
Actually, that's a good point because I guess the whole shame episode and that whole storyline was about her realizing that the people hated her and it does matter. Like you do need the people on your side because otherwise they can find a way to take you down. So maybe that is what's driving that.
Yeah, because I guess, she's still got some political smarts. And the other thing I thought was interesting is that they made a real point of showing that she still got emotional about her children when Tyrion was like, you're a mother. And then she sort of went, oh, and looked to the side and then back to strong resolve Cersei.
My favourite like Cersei manipulation in that episode though is that she's told Euron that the baby is hers. So she's now playing that whole game because
Cersei.
Classic gender play. Nothing motivates a man to protect you quite like thinking you're carrying his unborn child.
And he is so in for a betrayal. Like that is 100% about to happen.
Although also Yara has to come back and I want her to murder him.
Yeah, that would be very satisfying.
Really would.
Yeah. That would be
Is
great.
she on her way? Did they say she was on her way?
No, but I
They
just
said
feel like
she'd reclaimed the Iron Island.
there's
They
no
said
point
she's
in
got
bringing
it.
her back up unless she's going to reappear.
Oh no, they did say when they were doing all the strategy.
Yeah.
They said Yara's reclaimed the Iron Islands and is bringing the fleet over.
Also,
did
we've
they
got
say
some
that?
They did
random
say that.
Dornish
Right.
prince you've never heard of.
Who cares?
Yeah,
Thankfully, that's convenient.
pledged allegiance.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Hasn't pledged any supplies or troops or anything else, but he's there for you. Penny.
From the
support
sunny
you.
south, he's like, that sounds nice. I'll throw in my support for a
It's like
dragon.
a letter
queen."
of recommendation.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah, it just seems implausible.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting watching Cersei last night. Someone who's been one of my favorite characters for the whole show. And Lena Headey is such an extraordinary actress, and she's such a pleasure to watch. But
She was great last night.
I do think that Cersei has kind of gotten a bit boring as she's had like nothing to do except sort of stand and grimace and look mean. She was so much more interesting when she was like swanning around with her gorgeous hair, going up to Marjorie and being like, "Don't ever talk to me or my son ever again." That sort of thing.
That was such a fault of the writers, though. Like, if there's one character who can't be left alone, it's Cersei. Like, her whole thing is like how she bounces off other people and like her little crazy trickeries and things. If they'd just left her with like even like a Varys type character, would have been fine. But they just left her alone and she had no one to talk to, and thus no scheming.
I'm looking forward to the Hound getting through to have the fight
Clegane Bowl.
with.
Yeah, do you think it's
Yeah.
still coming? Is it still
It must be
coming?
because he's standing behind her the whole time, being all half dead and imposing. That's the only person she's got to talk to, and he's not much conversation.
Imagine.
So that
feel
fight must
bad.
be coming. That
I have
must be
no
coming.
interest in that though.
Or does Arya kill the mountain? That's very David and Goliath, isn't it?
Oh, that'd be.
Ooh,
I
that
want
would
the
be
Hound.
great.
Maybe the
Maybe they
Hound.
team up.
Yeah, the Hound gets killed, but just before he dies, he sees Arya
don't-
do it, and it's very nice.
I don't like the Hound though, and this isn't like going back to the sort of show's treatment of women. Like to have a show that's like women in power, but then still have like the Hound, who is a character that you're supposed to sympathize with, like aggressively intimidating women, and then someone like Bronn, who's just
But
like
he also aggressively intimidates men.
Yeah, I really like the
He's a
Hound.
He's
dick
just
to
a-
everyone.
he's
He's
just
an
a-
aggressive,
That's
surly
true.
prick to everyone.
I really
guess.
relate to the Hound.
right. I just feel like this.
He's definitely done some despicable things
Yeah.
for sure.
But they all
But
have.
join the list.
The other person, just you were about to say, I think, Bronn, that just is made no sense to me. I just thought that whole scene was so out of character for him to suddenly be ready to betray all
he was
the people.
way too aggrieved than he should have been because
Yeah.
he had adventures with both of those cats.
They're all pals.
Yeah, so he should have gone and been like, I want this and that, like he did, but not be punching them and shooting at them because
Was
he's
funny,
been friends with them. Well, that was a great scene.
But,
It was
but
so funny.
it also seems like such a lazy motivation to be like but he wants a castle.
He doesn't just want he wants a bigger castle than the castle he's been offered.
I know, and it's like, does anyone like what actually comes with running a castle? It sounds like a lot of admin, a lot of time.
Correct.
I
a lot
think
of cleaning.
Yeah.
My incredibly wrong fan theory is that was his sort of goodbye. Like, I don't think we'll see him again.
Yeah.
Because
just like letting them know what Cersei was up to.
Yeah, like what's the point of bringing him back to be like, okay, and here's your castle for not killing us? I think we're sort of in the movements of saying goodbye to people. We saw Sam go. We saw
Tormund,
the wildlings go.
Yeah,
the dire wolf.
So I think that was his little goodbye. I could be way off base, which would be
no,
on
you're
brand,
right. There was a lot of like tying up of loose ends.
I think that was just him doing his little swashbuckling goodbye, which
and
I quite like. It was a great scene.
Yeah, I'm
pretty
really
funny.
into Bronn. Yeah.
We've only got 2 episodes to go as well, so I don't
That's
feel like
right.
he plays a massive part.
But this is the weird thing, and this is what we were saying last episode, is that like there's all of this last minute tying off of loose ends, and all of it seems like it was for nothing. Like it feels like we followed all these multiple
And what the
storylines
hell,
for
Bran?
nothing.
What the hell, Bran?
Bran's
You're still
cancelled.
useless. You're still just annoyingly riddling.
And that's
What's your point of this whole thing? What's
that's
the point
where
of you?
I reckon it all comes back to the fact as soon as they went off books, they didn't have a master vision, and they got themselves in too deep, and they were like, exit strategy, abort, abort, abort.
Yeah. Well, also on what you just said, Sienna, the fact that the Battle of Winterfell, yes, they grieved at the start, but it already feels like they're sort of been like, and we won that war. And it's like, sorry, so 8 seasons I was being told that the Night King is this all-powerful villain, that like that is the real war to come, and no, it's not. Okay.
No, back to Cersei.
Back to Cersei. Okay. That's been dealt with.
I think I've been saying since I first started talking about Game of Thrones with you guys was that the whole white zombie Snow Walker thing was just boring. It's always been boring. It was boring. Its ending was unsatisfying. If that is the last we see of it, unless Bran turns into the guy, which is a theory. So
That's
I don't know.
not going to happen.
The most interesting part of Game of Thrones has always been that political intrigue and all that chess pieces moving around and people trying to get one up on each other. For me personally, so I'm quite glad all that White Walker stuff went, but yeah, it did take up far too much time. It should have been got rid of from the start.
I just feel like I put all that time into it, as if me saying that as though it was an actual emotionally laborious journey, but still,
It was like there's no way to not feel a little bit cheated by that whole thing because one, you couldn't really see it, so that's a big part of it. But also, it just wrapped up one episode to get rid of 4 seasons worth of White Walkers. Here they come plotting.
The ultimate
you.
threat, and
Like the battle last season when they were in the snow, when Jon Snow went behind the wall, that was far more exciting than the actual main battle. When
correct.
the giant came walking
during
out
the
and
day,
and it was during the day.
You
You
could
could
see
see
stuff.
That one also though had a very implausible ending. When remember Jon Snow's uncle, who had been beyond the walls, just showed up at the exact moment to save him and carry him back to Castle Black. And like, phew, that was lucky.
And also, I just remember that's another time that Jon Snow almost died, which must be up to like 5 now.
and he has actually died.
Yeah, he's actually died. He's a cat with 9 lives. Well, he's the new Beric Dondarrion.
Beric Dondarrion.
Beric Dondy. I'll make Dondy.
Yeah.
Beric Dondarrion. That's not a knife.
I don't know
This
who
is
that
a knife.
I see you. I see you with your reference.
Okay. All right. So,
I still enjoyed the episode.
yeah.
Yeah.
We
I
tore
just-
it apart.
The second half,
improvement.
the first half.
I'm definitely glad it's back to sort of the thrones that I know and love. But I think what I'm finding unsatisfying at this point is knowing there's only 2 episodes to come. So there's only so far this can play out. We know there's got to be a big battle. We know there's going to be a resolution. And I can't really get on board with how I can't see any scenario in which that's going to be well handled and executed and feel satisfying or plausible. And that's what. And so then, even though yesterday was a good episode, all of that is going on in the back of my mind, and I'm like, I'm finding it hard to buy into.
Yeah, and I appreciate that it must be like an impossible job to wrap up a show like that, but even so, they're not doing a good job of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Guys, I have a theory.
Okay.
Here's my theory.
Do you have a tinfoil hat on?
I've hidden it away so you don't judge me.
Oh, we judge you.
I know, I can feel it from across the room. My theory is that Jon is going to kill Dany. She's going to lose it, and he's going to do that big emotional, I'm sorry, but it's for your own good, stabbing through the heart. And then he's going to be like, you know what? I want out. And he's going to just abdicate to Sansa, and Sansa wins the Game of
But
Thrones.
they've already said that he can't do that because someone, what's the guy's name? Varys, I think, said.
You've got to have a penis to be in charge. That's what he said.
He said that at
Varys
one
doesn't
point,
have a
but
penis,
later
he
on,
can't talk.
But later on, he said, "Now you made me forget what he said." He said what he wants and what the people want are different, and it doesn't matter what he wants. If the people want him to be
because
a king,
he actually would happily let Dany be in charge, but the point is the public will never support that.
yeah. So
Because
that's
Maybe
why
it's
I
a
kinda like-
murder-suicide
I
situation.
like your theory, and I also wonder
Some
whether
Romeo
maybe
and Juliet.
she'll return the favor and get Drogon to kill him or something like that. But I think you might be onto something. There might be a real clash coming between them, and then maybe my hope is that in this world they all see that like terror falls from the sky in the form of a dragon, fire and brimstone, etc., etc., and so they all suddenly be like, well, you know what? If that can happen, why can't a woman be in charge? Let's overhaul the rules.
Don't be ridiculous, George.
It's not going to happen, but my hope is there. I mean,
Live in your
this
fantasy world.
This is another thing that's frustrating me about Game of Thrones is that in a show in which you can rewrite, you can have ice zombies and dragons and stuff, but you still can't rewrite power
but we
structures.
still have the patriarchy.
Yeah, I know. It's
Yay.
like, come on.
It's undefeatable.
I know. So
But
my
that,
hope is
I guess
Sansa.
that has always been the weird thing with Game of Thrones, though, that it's sort of historically accurate, but also not remotely.
Well, this is the thing when everyone's like, oh, there's too many rape scenes. And everyone's like, it's historically accurate. I'm like, you've got dragons.
I know. Like, I'm sorry, which world's history? Did you live in
Yeah.
Westeros?
And people who change faces and
Yeah, no, that seems fine.
And also
a man in a wheelchair who
Giants.
is a bird that can see all of history.
also a completely ancient woman who looks beautiful, gave birth to a smoky shadow
Yeah,
baby.
it seems fine.
Yeah,
Yep.
totally
Makes
fine.
sense.
Totally fine.
Hal's
Okay.
gone abnormally quiet.
Oh no, just that I had a flashback to Bran's annoying conversation where it's like,
Oh, he's like,
"Don't be jealous of me. I live in the past mostly." And
the best line of that whole episode was like, I don't really want anymore.
it's like, oh, that guy is just so irritating.
Relatable.
And also, like seconds before Jamie walked out and bumped into him, you saw him sitting behind the table with all the people. And then Jamie turns around and walks out, and boom, he's right there, being all like, "I don't want anything."
I mean, that's probably the lesser gaff compared to the coffee cup.
Good time.
Am I
Oh,
right?
look, it's literally right on the
It's on
screen.
the screen behind us for viewers who can't, listeners who can't see.
OMG. I have not seen that. And also, this is a podcast, so no one else can see
Yeah.
it. Can someone explain?
To
People have seen
listeners,
on the
scroll
internet.
back to the party in Winterfell, and there's a shot of Daenerys looking at Jon, who's
Jealously, enviously.
who's
at
drinking,
Jon.
being praised, and in front of Daenerys is a coffee cup. So that
A takeaway
Just
coffee
somebody
cup with a
left their
plastic
Starbucks
lid.
cup
I
behind.
think a runner or an art designer or a continuity producer got fired that day,
They will have been now because
or
it's
got
all over
fired
the
today,
news.
and they're like, "Well, joke's on you because the show's over." So
I'm-
shout out to you, continuity producer.
I didn't notice it when I was watching it, so I'm not too upset about it.
But you noticed everything else
To be
going
fair,
on.
I was going to say we don't notice a lot when we're watching.
Well, that's right, we're this podcast.
Yeah.
I forgot what podcast I was on for a minute there.
At least we know Daenerys is caffeinated.
Exactly.
Clearly.
I thought that was an interesting scene, though, in that that it is this idea of being an outsider, and ultimately, that's I think a big part of like power is how like being adored is actually the most powerful form of power, and that's what
Yeah.
Cersei doesn't have. It's what Dany doesn't have, but it's what Jon has. And Sansa, we don't really know quite.
Yeah, I haven't seen what they think of her.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, I felt for Daenerys because it's like, I'm sorry, I walked into a fire naked with 3 eggs. I walked out with 3 dragons. I raised those dragons. You ride it once, and suddenly you're king of the world. Like, I'd be miffed.
Also, I'm your auntie, so show some respect to your elders.
Exactly.
Actually, that's an interesting. We don't even know how old they are, or if she is
If it's-
older than him.
If it's plausible for that to work.
Well, yeah. I mean, I
mean,
guess
it
brothers and
works, but-
sisters can be hugely aged. No, I can't. Like a brother could be 20 years older than his sister, and so he might have a child that's
That's
older
closer
than
in
age.
that's his auntie, but is older than his.
So that's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a bit of a
I
headache,
can't
but I
get
know
around
it.
it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Sort of plausible. I
Weird
guess.
things like that. Like I have my cousin's kids are closer in age to me than my cousin is.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
that type of thing. Anyway, okay, we've gone off piste. Well, let's just wrap it up there. We'll stay tuned for next week. Are we excited? Or
think
Yeah,
that's-
I think
that'll be
it's
the
next
big
week
one.
might be a battle episode, right? Because
Yeah.
the trailer didn't give anything away.
Yes,
Oh,
something is
yeah.
coming.
With only 2 episodes left, and there's going to have to be at least half an hour of wind down.
Mm.
So we've got what?
Plus that wedding. Plus,
No.
and wait,
What wedding?
wait.
What?
I
Sorry,
predicted a wedding.
why is Gilly pregnant? Why is Gilly even alive?
Why is Gilly there?
Gilly there?
How was
Why
Sam alive?
Was
No, but
that
they've-
their
they've-
farewell?
I think we said
Yeah.
bye to
Yeah.
them.
That was
Yeah.
that was
It
the
was just them
goodbye.
getting out of the
Piss
plot.
off.
Yeah.
Do not care.
yeah, that would I agree.
That was them leaving the show.
She has had 2 lines all season.
Or-
One of them was, "We'll be safe in the crypt," and the other was, "We'll call him John."
But if she hadn't been there, everyone would be like, "Where's the wife at?"
Who would be like
Where's
that?
she?
Who cares?
Everyone who's moaning about coffee cups would be like, "Where has she
Oh, that's
been?
true,
Where's she
that's
been?"
true.
If you had told me he had
The
like,
internet is who?
Hmm.
I would have just assumed he'd fallen off a horse and couldn't get back up. Like,
He's still underneath some bodies where he fell over during the fight.
happily buy
Help
that.
me.
Happily buy that.
Poor Sam. Well, he
Okay.
saved the day with his
save
discoveries.
He didn't though
anything.
because Bran already
Not the
knew.
fight, the discoveries. Yeah, but Bran's not talking to anyone. He's just he's not even walking
the
around. He's
only
just
thing-
wheeling around.
The only
Being
thing he
annoying.
contributed was picking off the grayscale from Sejora, and then Sejora died anyway.
He
so-
got the glass, the
Yeah.
dragon glass stuff. He said, "Oh, look,
Oh,
I've got to
yeah,
use the
okay.
dragon glass."
Stop
Oh, look, I got the
defending
book,
Sam.
John.
was
You're
helpful.
the man, John. You're the man.
Still, he could have died last episode.
Hmm.
He should have.
He really should have.
Someone should have, because we had that big funeral at the start of this episode, and it was showing us all these people. Who cares?
This
I don't
is
care
the
about
thing
any
I
of these
don't
people.
get. Like, if you're saying all these goodbyes anyway, why don't you just kill them off last episode?
Well, it's because Hollywood can't kill family men. It's their biggest.
I think it might be just
It's
maybe
the
they were scared
untouchable
of
thing.
maybe they were scared of fan uprising reaction. You killed my
Yeah,
favorite.
but then they got the
person.
opposite fan uprising where they're like, you didn't kill enough people.
You can't please anyone. That's the moral of the show.
I'd have been pleased if Sam and Gilly were brutally murdered.
On that
Same.
bombshell.
Yeah, I said it. I said it.
I'm with you.
Thank you.
I am on board. On that bombshell, we will leave you and see you next week. Bye.